The Black Death and Plague Doctors. While the most infamous strain of the Black Plague is Yersinia pestis, there were actually multiple strains of the bacterium responsible for the plague during the medieval outbreaks. These strains varied in their virulence and spread, contributing to the complexity of the pandemic. The Black Death profoundly influenced art and culture during the late Middle Ages. Artistic representations of death, such as macabre imagery featuring skeletons and the Dance of Death motif, became prevalent in European art. The trauma and fear generated by the pandemic found expression in literature, music, and religious practices of the time, leaving a lasting imprint on the collective consciousness of medieval society. While the Black Death is commonly associated with Europe, it was actually a global pandemic. It spread to Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, causing widespread devastation in regions beyond Europe. Beyond its immediate health impact, the Black Death had profound social and economic consequences. It resulted in labor shortages, which in turn led to increased wages for workers and undermined the feudal system in Europe. Additionally, the drastic reduction in population led to changes in land use and inheritance patterns, reshaping the socio-economic landscape for generations to come. While it's well known that the Black Death primarily affected humans, it also had a significant impact on animals. Rats, particularly black rats, are often associated with spreading the plague through fleas. However, other animals such as sheep, goats, and cattle also suffered from outbreaks of a similar disease during the same period. This suggests a broader impact on ecosystems beyond just human populations. The Black Death is often thought of as a single catastrophic event, but it actually occurred in multiple waves over several centuries. The initial outbreak in the 14th century was the most infamous, but subsequent outbreaks occurred in the following centuries, albeit with less intensity. These later outbreaks are sometimes referred to as the Second Pandemic and Third Pandemic. While the most common symptoms of the Black Death were fever, swollen lymph nodes, buboes, and blackened skin lesions, there were variations in how the disease manifested. Some victims experienced respiratory symptoms similar to pneumonia, while others suffered from gastrointestinal symptoms such as vomiting and diarrhea. These variations contributed to the confusion surrounding the nature of the disease at the time. Due to the sheer number of casualties during the Black Plague, mass burials became common practice. However, in some areas, such as London, mass graves from the plague era are still occasionally discovered during construction work, offering insights into the scale and impact of the pandemic. While the Black Plague is often viewed as a relic of the past, cases of bubonic plague, the most common form of the disease during the medieval outbreaks, still occur in various parts of the world today. Though rare, outbreaks remind us that the threat of the plague has not been entirely eradicated. Plague doctors were known for their distinctive attire, which included a long black robe, a wide-brimmed hat, and a beaked mask. The mask, often filled with aromatic herbs and spices, was believed to protect the wearer from miasma, or foul air, which was thought to spread the disease. Plague doctors operated during a time when the understanding of disease transmission was rudimentary. They believed in the miasma theory of disease, which posited that illnesses were spread by noxious air, or bad air, emanating from decomposing matter. While the attire of plague doctors may have offered some protection against fleas and other pests, it provided minimal defense against the actual cause of the Black Death, the bacterium Yersinia pestis. Consequently, many plague doctors fell victim to the disease themselves. Plague doctors were often not trained physicians, but rather individuals such as barbers or other tradesmen who took on the role during outbreaks. They were tasked with treating plague victims, though their treatments were largely ineffective due to the limited medical knowledge of the time. Plague doctors were sometimes known to perform a strange dance-like movement while visiting patients. This peculiar behavior was believed to be a form of protection against evil spirits or the disease itself. Some accounts suggest they would moonwalk or shuffle their feet in a ritualistic manner as they approached the sick. Plague doctors often administered bizarre and ineffective remedies to their patients. These included concoctions made from unusual ingredients such as crushed insects, arsenic, or even human excrement, all based on the belief that they could ward off the disease. Despite their role in treating the sick, plague doctors were sometimes viewed with suspicion and fear by the general population. Their ominous appearance, complete with the beaked mask and dark robes, led to superstitions that they were either witches, warlocks, or even harbingers of the disease itself. Due to their protective masks, plague doctors often had difficulty communicating clearly with patients and others. The beaked masks, while intended to filter out harmful miasma, also distorted their voices, leading to misunderstandings. In certain cases, plague doctors would strategically retreat from areas experiencing outbreaks rather than risk their own health. Some would negotiate higher fees for their services in highly affected regions, while others simply fled to avoid contracting the deadly disease themselves, leaving the sick to fend for themselves.